progressive cities in the United States of America.
To let you on the mic. Okay. All right, so we are trying to be reasonable. We are trying to be reasonable. We're gonna let you on the mic. We are gonna give you the mic. We will, after Senator Sanders.
So I wasn't initially sure that I was going to be able to get to the Seattle rally wherein Black Lives Matter protesters had shut down Bernie Sanders' event, just because, I filmed the show on Friday last week and then it occurred on Saturday. And so in the meanwhile, there's been so much things that have happened since then. But since I'm both an avid Bernie Sanders supporter and an avid Black Lives Matter supporter, I thought that you guys would probably want to hear my take on the issue. Now, I'll just straight up get into it. I disagree with the protesters shutting down Bernie Sanders' rally. Now, I'll preface this by saying that I actually supported the event at Netroots Nation. The Netroots Nation event was mutually beneficial for both parties, both Bernie Sanders and Black Lives Matter. Now, the reason why I say that is because I think that it made Bernie Sanders a better candidate overall. Bernie Sanders showed that he was responsive. They wanted him to name the victims so that way they can get the message out there, and he did that. He named Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray. He talked about these issues more so than any other candidate, and then a week later he released what specific policies that he would put forth to stop police brutality and institutional racism, and some of those were repealing mandatory minimums, demilitarization of police forces, reforming use of force policies. So in the end, I thought it was better. But when it comes to the Seattle protest, I don't think it was effective in the end, and potentially even more detrimental to the overall message that they were trying to get across. So the biggest criticism that I have is that the two protesters were unnecessarily divisive. I don't think that some of their statements were correct. So, for example, one of the girls said, if you care about Black Lives Matter as you say you do, you will hold Bernie Sanders specifically accountable for his actions. But this implies that Bernie Sanders had acted in a manner that undermines the Black Lives movement in general, but that's not the case. He's the one candidate that's going to bolster the Black Lives Matter cause. Since the Netroots Nation event, I think he's done so much better. He's been tremendous on the issue, and this is why a lot of individuals within the Black Lives Matter movement, such as Deaver McKesson, have been supportive of Bernie Sanders and have been retweeting some of the things that he's been saying on Twitter and whatnot. So now they also implied that the audience there was racist. In an interview with This Week in Blackness, one of the girls had said that, how is this crowd different than the KKK? So here's the deal. Your message is not going to resonate with the crowd if you attack them and call them racist. If you really thought that it was necessary to disrupt this event, well, then you could have at least been a lot less argumentative. Now, this gets into respectability politics, and I don't think that marginalized minorities need to be respectful of people just to gain white approval. I think that if being disrespectful and trying to forcefully get the message out will be effective, then by all means, you should do that. And I think you're even obligated to do that. But in this case, with this particular instance, I think that being overly divisive and argumentative actually detracted from your message. And it's because the crowd was probably thinking, wait, we actually agree with you. We have the same message. We stand by you. And they may not have been receptive to your message at that particular protest because they disagreed with your tactics, but they're probably thinking, why are you calling us out? See, before Bernie even had the chance to speak, you threatened to, quote, shut this bitch down if you didn't get to speak. Now, you didn't have to approach Bernie Sanders in that manner because the first thing that he tried to do when you jumped up on stage was he tried to shake your hand. So you could see there that you have an ally. You don't have to be as aggressive with your tactics. But I mean, if he was going to not let you speak and if he was going to not be receptive to your message, then sure, up the ante a little bit. But that wasn't the case, and you didn't need to do that. It was unnecessary. Bernie Sanders supporters are going to be the most receptive to your message, but it doesn't matter what the crowd is or what they believe in, what their political ideology is or political orientation is. No crowd is going to be receptive to your message if you just get up there and throw shit in their faces. So I think if you were less aggressive, the crowd probably would have actually been more receptive to your message. So now a second problem that I have is that in the same interview that I mentioned with This Week in Blackness, they were asked whether or not they were worried that in hindsight, this event could potentially hurt the aggregate Black Lives Matter movement. And the response was, I don't give a fuck. Okay, well, if that's the case, then you must not really care about police brutality and institutional racism, because it looks like you're being an opportunist. It looks like you're trying to use the Black Lives Matter platform as a stepping stone to kind of bolster your own career as an activist and gain notoriety for yourself. Now, I don't think that's the case, but that's what people are going to think when they hear you say things like that. Look, if you really want to stop institutional racism, I think you should do everything in your power to do so. We all should be fighting for this cause, but you want to make sure that your message doesn't get lost in the process. And I think that you didn't do that in this case. I think you actually diverted people away from the message, which is a problem because Black Lives Matter has one of the most important messages in the political field today. So in the end, I think that the protest was not politically pragmatic, and the tactics that they used were overly divisive, and instead of educating allies, they decided to attack them. Now, look, I don't disagree with their message. I support their cause, and Bernie Sanders supports their cause, but it's just the tactics that were problematic. Now, it's great they are actually doing something. They're getting off their butts to stop institutional racism. But, I mean, we've got to combat this problem in a manner that's going to be the most effective so we can really affect change. Now, you want to make alliances and build coalitions, not burn bridges. That's the main goal. Now, going through all the comments online, this event turned a lot of people off to the aggregate Black Lives Matter movement. But if you're a Bernie supporter and a progressive in general, don't be turned off to the movement. These were just two individuals. They aren't even technically associated with Black Lives Matter. They're actually part of a group called Outside Agitators 206. But, I mean, I don't even think that matters. A lot of other people were saying that they're funded by George Soros and that they're just Hillary Clinton plans. I don't agree with that. And I don't even care about that. I just want people to get the message out about Black Lives Matter. But I just think that this wasn't practical. Now, like, here's the deal. I can't tell these two protesters what to be angry about. I can't tell them to control their emotions. I can't tell them to be respectful. All I can do as an ally is try to listen to the message and try to do my best to objectively further the cause of their message. I have intersectional identities as well. I'm an atheist, I'm gay, I'm Hispanic. Now, even though I'm Hispanic, that doesn't necessarily mean that I could speak out on behalf of African American issues with authority, because I benefit from white privilege. I mean, I look white. Most of the time, people just think I'm Italian, but that's not the case with my parents. They faced a lot of racism and they shared their stories with me, and obviously that resonated with me. So I'm always worried about minority interests, no matter what the group is, if it's an ethnic or racial minority, or if it's a sexual minority or religious minority. But with that being said, I've read some op-eds on the Huffington Post, for example, that have said that white liberals shouldn't judge at all whether the tactics of black activists are actually effective. But I reject that, because you can't put yourself above criticism. That's a conservative tactic. That's not a tactic that us progressives use. Black Lives Matter is a progressive movement, and that's not what they've been using thus far. They haven't put themselves above criticism. They've just been trying to get the message out there. So you can't tell people to shut off critical thinking on one issue. That's unreasonable. But that goes both ways. Bernie Sanders supporters shouldn't shut off criticism from Black Lives Matter and say that Bernie Sanders is untouchable and you can't critique him, because I disagree with that as well. And I think that debate, discussion, dialogue are all really important, because I've gained some valuable insight from allies. So, for instance, I've heard straight people tell me, look, Mike, I think that when gay men go to gay pride parades and wear assless chaps and have dildos hanging off their hats and stuff, I think that that makes them look bad and hurts the movement. And I think that that's a totally agreeable point. Now, again, I disagree with respectability politics. I don't think that someone from a marginalized group should have to be respectful and try to gain approval from the group who is the majority. But at the same time, I prioritize getting the message out of equality. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you shouldn't attack individuals that are your closest allies. And if you're going to critique them, if you're going to try to attack them, then you should do it in a manner that's going to be effective, because Bernie Sanders is more receptive to your message than any other politician. So you didn't need to go up there and yell in his face and threaten to shut this bitch down, because he was going to let you speak. Now, as Kyle Kulinski pointed out on Secular Talk, what they're doing by shutting down Bernie Sanders, in effect, is the bidding of corporations and billionaires, because they too want to shut down Bernie Sanders. So the bottom line is this. Bernie Sanders is with you, black progressives, white progressives, and all progressives need to be united on this issue and stand together. So Bernie has already supported the Black Lives Matter cause before the Netroots Nation incident. He immediately adjusted his campaign to accommodate many of their concerns. Bernie Sanders wasn't just paying them lip service. The protesters probably didn't know that the very morning before they protested him, he hired Simone Sanders as his press secretary, who was a Black Lives Matter activist. And 3 weeks before that, he was already in talks with her, and she was counseling him on how to reach out to Black Lives Matter activists. Now, in the end, I think that this wasn't an effective protest. Now, people will dispute that, and rightfully so. They'll say, look, but the very next day, he released a platform to stop institutional racism. I covered it on the show. But the fact of the matter is that he already released it the week after the Netroots Nation incident. He didn't codify it and put it on his website, which he should have done in the first place. But the fact remains that they say that he did it anyway because of the protest. But that's something that you can't really prove. It's a very comprehensive list. He tackles institutional racism from 4 different points. So in the end, I support Black Lives Matter 100%. It's a decentralized organization. You can't control or predict what different types of chapters will do or different type of individuals who identify with the movement will do. But in the end, I'm all about furthering the movement and getting the message out there. And I just think that this overall diverted people away from the main message. And now I think we just need to get back on topic and just stay focused on the Black Lives Matter cause and make sure that we're forcing these politicians to put forth policies that will end institutional racism. So I hope that they now target other politicians on not just the Democratic side, but the Republican side as well. Now, they've already targeted Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, but I think that they should do more until they put out a criminal justice reform proposal. Bernie Sanders did that. So I think that if you really want to now affect change, you got to help him get elected, and you can meet with him to tell him how to do that and how to reach out to Black Lives Matter. So that's my take on it. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. I just ask that people be respectful, because progressives, Bernie Sanders supporters, and Black Lives Matter activists, they're both on the same side. We stand together. So we shouldn't be arguing. We shouldn't be fighting. We just have to make sure that we further both Bernie Sanders' campaign and the Black Lives Matter message.